KK Reaper.
And I'm Luna Reaper.
And this is A Frightful Eve. This evening, we will be reviewing It Lives Inside, about Sam, who rejects her Indian culture and family to be like everyone else. However, when a mythological demonic spirit latches onto her former best friend, she must come to terms with her heritage to defeat it.
But first, the horror news.
After 14 plus hours of the greatest lineup of 80s horror talent ever assembled, the In Search of Darkness 80s trilogy has come to a close. But as we all know, horror never dies. Creator VC's next installment, In Search of Darkness 1990 to 1994, now takes up the mantle. Some call it a lost decade of horror, but these horror doc masters beg to differ. This was an exciting time for filmmaking that we can't wait to explore. Your opportunity to pre-order the newest installment into the next decade of horror begins on October 6th.
If there's one thing that we love about this time of year, it's the nostalgia for everything that makes us the horror fiends that we are. What screams classic childhood horror like Goosebumps? Disney announces a series that will focus on books Say Cheese and Die, The Haunted Mask, The Cuckoo Clock of Doom, Go Eat Worms, and Night of the Living Dummy. So finish your homework and turn off the lights, because Goosebumps will be streaming on October 13th on Hulu and Disney+.
This year marks the 50th anniversary of The Exorcist, and, rightfully so, many new installments are coming out surrounding the genre-defining film. No, not Exorcist Believer. We're talking about the parody rock musical Exorcistic. LA's smash hit show and Hollywood Fringe Festival 2013 Best Musical winner is a love letter to fans of the film, hilarious musical parodies, and the sheer demonic power of rock and roll. Following a successful Kickstarter campaign, a star-studded cast brings the sensational play to the box in New York City for select dates through October. Tickets on sale now.
Smile was a staple movie of 2022 with one of the most dedicated advertising teams, drawing masses of horror fans and horrified fans. What if there was more to the story? Laura Hasn't Slept is a horror short released in 2020 about a woman explaining to her therapist that she keeps seeing a smiling monster that is haunting her dreams. When her therapist morphs into that very nightmare, our victim's sanity is sent into a spiral. You can catch this short film to gear up for the anticipated Smile sequel on YouTube now.
The Mary Lou's return with a brand new single reportedly based on true events, My Boyfriend Dumped Me Because I'm a Witch. It is the first official release from the dynamic duo since the groovy hit Fang 10 in 2021. This catchy tune features the group's iconic ukulele sound and spooky surfer style. You can listen and download to this latest track on the Mary Lou's official Bandcamp page now.
It's the time of year that is as good as any to support a small business. Last week we featured Rattlehead Crafts. Tonight's small business spotlight is on Lively Ghosts, an LA-based company that has a classic Halloween aesthetic mixed with a dark academia influence, with candles, tapestries, clothing, pins, and more. If you like an elevated and mysterious look to your Halloween, Lively Ghosts is for you.
For more information on these events, check out the links in the description below.
And now for the review of It Lives Inside.
Okay. This is one of the I shouldn't say one of the first, but I would say one of the few movies that we differed in opinion this much on.
Yeah, and I think sitting with it and digesting it, I see where our common grounds are.
Yeah.
But starting off with the classic plot of, I know one thing for you was that you wanted more originality.
Yes.
And it is the classic plot for many movies of person who is an outcast in their own way, has a sort of battle, overcome. Mm-hmm. This way of Sam not fitting in was being a person of color, an Indian woman, or young woman in a white suburban neighborhood, just wanting to fit in with all the,
nerds.
Kyles and Sarahs of the neighborhood. I do see.
I'll say that on that note, that I can appreciate the originality of taking those core concepts, the cultural influence, and those aspects, and bringing it to this film. My only argument was that it felt like that on top of same old song and dance for a typical demon movie.
Yes, and I think we mentioned that when we were talking about it, that is a played out plot. It is, the standard plot, and at least it did bring a whole new demographic of like different ways you cannot fit in. I know we were specifically discussing the fact of there's always like that young brooding kid, probably like 17-year-old white boy with denim jacket that isn't understood by his dad. And even though this is a very played out plot, it's at least bringing a whole new group of people of like other ways you cannot fit in.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be relatable to us, but it still brings this forefront of a whole new level of outcast.
Yeah, I can definitely get where that's coming from. And I think one of the things that we kind of discussed was that on paper, that idea works.
Yes.
If I read this as a book, I'd be interested in the book. Mm-hmm. I think the tropes of the film and the way that it's executed throughout the beginning to end, and I'll even give the end a little bit more credit because I do believe that the second half of the film kind of saves the first, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But on screen versus on paper, I just feel like the execution was just a little underwhelming.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, getting into the deeper aspects of the film, let's move on to the acting.
Yes.
And what we liked and what we didn't.
Yes.
Russ was awful.
When you and I left the theater, I think I was so distracted by everyone else that when you said there was really bad acting, I was like, what were you talking about? But it was only because I was so focused on Sam and what was her friend?
Tamira.
Sam and Tamira, that I was so focused on them that when you said bad acting, I was so surprised. But then, on the drive home, I was like, oh yeah, Russ was not good.
Great.
Not good.
And that's one of the cases of like, was it the writing? Was it the person portraying him? Or was it both?
He was casted as eye candy. What more can you do with that?
I know. I do think that is kind of the direction that it was headed. And that's the thing I think that kills me the most too about the stereotypical tropes is that who's lined up to the slaughter,
Yes.
So the teacher,
yes,
she was another one who at least I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she's from Get Out.
Yes, so I was very excited the moment I saw her on screen.
Right, yeah. I knew the face like right away, and I was like, I can't place it for the life of me. Once you said Get Out, I was like, oh yeah. So she's got a great background already, so she knows what she's doing. I think there's a lot of first timers here. I think the people who played Sam and Tamira did a good job, and okay. I don't think that it like blew me away, but I do think that they have a bright future ahead of them if they chose to stay with the horror genre and if they wanted to continue in that path, even just in acting in general, but specifically horror.
Okay.
Wide eyes, crying, screaming, hyperventilating.
I remember that's why I liked Sam so much. She has such beautiful, large, expressive eyes, and seeing her made me think of, I call it the Shelley Duvall trope, where I think it's very underappreciated when people really look over the actor or actress that's role is to cry and panic and stuff like that. That is exhausting acting. That is hard acting. And I think it's easy to not care about that. But if you have seen this for as long and you have appreciated a Scream Queen and stuff like that, you can see that. And I think, especially as a first timer, that she and Tamira did fantastic for first timers.
Oh yeah, yeah. Taking that into account, definitely, I would agree. And the director, Duda, I think is his last name. He had only done short films and music videos up until this point.
Oh.
So as a first-time feature-length director, also a very well done, well done job. So those things considered, I give them credit where credit is due. If this is the first entry into their path into the horror genre, I think that's very well done. I think they all have bright futures ahead of them if they continue with it. That being said, that also segues into the best aspects of this movie being the cinematography and the lighting and all the aspects that really, again, I think are big saving graces. We talked a lot about the fact that Tamira, once she's abducted by this demon, the red sort of hellscape that we just sort of, we assume that she's in this paranormal universe just based on the way that the storyline is going. And the fact that the red lighting comes from a room, it doesn't feel natural, but once you see the elements of that at the end and it's this big reveal, that was, to me, something that at least kind of gave you like an element of surprise throughout this entire thing. You think like, Sam's having nightmares. Maybe she's just having premonitions because she's haunted. Or maybe, Tamira's reaching out from the paranormal realm. And then you find out it's just the guy who died before her, or, the kid who summoned the demon originally.
I believe he trapped it first. Or no.
Something, so it latched onto him.
Yes, it was his family that it latched onto.
Right. And then it kills them off that 1 year prior and then captures Tamira.
I think that's what I liked a lot, is that this movie did well, that I've seen not succeed in the past, of the bopping between, which at first I assumed was different universes. I assumed that she was dragged to hell in some way or something like that.
Yeah.
So the bopping between Tamira and Sam's reality, I thought was done well. And then it closed it off to where, she's not even in a hell, or she's not even in a different realm. She's in the basement. The demon always goes back to its last kill. Yeah. So I think they did that very well.
Yeah. And that aspect of the 7 days.
Yes.
Too,
7 days.
The 7 days. that is at least the originality that it brings to the table, but that I feel like is probably all the originality it probably brings to the table for the
remember the last time we heard was 7 days. The Ring.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So not even totally, but a different element, different element, same trope.
Yeah.
we keep coming back to that. And I will say that I think the PG-13 rating brings, that's just a given. It brings it back every time.
Right.
It reels you back in every time you want to go for that extravagant kill, that gory scene. The pinnacle of it all that I was really hoping for was the dad getting it. And I thought it was going to be like this big splatter fest, and it didn't even look like he got scratched.
Well, remember, we're desensitized sociopaths.
Yes.
So, maybe it'll be the one that does it for you, as far as gore goes.
I think if you have a tame palate.
Yes. We've seen too much.
Yeah. Terrifier.
Saw.
Saws.
The one thing that I did like in the beginning that lost points for me in the end was I think this movie did for a while do a good job at the demon who cannot be seen by those who are not being tortured by it. I think they did that well. You know, Sam is trying to help Tamira, even though she did a not great job because she was just trying to, you know, be a part of the popular crew. But when Tamira was obviously seeing this demon that Sam could not, and she was freaking out, Sam had nowhere to look. For a while, they did a really good job at being tortured by the Invincible, where when they started to introduce the demon and show its eyes, that was fine. I think the best on-camera action it had was when it was having that battle with the teacher.
Right.
And then once they exposed the demon, and it wasn't my favorite character design, personally. And I remember we did a little bit of research because this is a god, this is a demon, this is a story in Hindu culture. And I was wondering, I was like, is this culturally accurate? Like, did they stick to it? And from the photos that we were referencing, no. It does have an extremely different look.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just being over picky on something that is just have an image.
How it's supposed to look, right.
Right, which is not the case. And for me, it just was not. The head was very off-brand pumpkin head for me.
Right.
Big head, little arm.
T-Rex.
Once I saw it, it started losing points for me as far as a creature.
Right. I understand. I think that, like, I agree with you in the sense of losing points because it lost its scare factor, for sure. Once you got a good look at it, it no longer held that suspenseful sort of air over you.
Yes.
The only thing that was a pro to me was how they tackled making the monster. Because for once, it felt like, and I don't know for certain, I didn't get a chance to really look that deep into it, but it seemed to me that everything was done practically, and I know I'm a sucker for that.
Always. We'll always love practicals.
But it looked like, at the very least, a labor of love went into making that happen.
I know we both appreciated the souls in the chest.
Yes, yeah, that very
cool.
Nightmare on Elm Street 4 kind of thing with the souls popping out and
very
breathing.
Cool. Very
yeah.
Cool.
You know, there's aspects of that. I definitely would agree that the, you know, tiny arms hunched over was not all that terrifying. But the attention to detail with the marble eyes, the big sort of rat teeth, and the souls on the body, that was something that, again, for the latter half of the film, saved it for me, because then I had something to look at and be like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Like, I dig that, you know? Maybe not on the level of like, oh my god, I'm peeing my pants, but I can appreciate the good effect.
Reaper.
What, Bartholomew?
What is the final verdict?
It Lives Inside takes Indian culture and gives it a decent horror treatment, pulling from the darker, demonic side of Sam's heritage to create a strong narrative about isolation and loneliness, especially in someone trying to fit into their new life away from their roots.
Although the initial narrative gives this film the makings of a great supernatural thriller, its PG-13 restrictions, mixed with some uninspired performances and reliance on many overplayed tropes from the possession films that have come before, leaves much to be desired. And for that, we give this film a 6.5 out of 10.
That's our show. Thanks for tuning in.
And until next time, Ghosts and Ghouls, have a frightful eve.